I want to welcome everyone to our June board meeting, and we have the privilege of having Miss Destiny Barksdale with us tonight to open us in prayer.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us your grace and mercy during these trying times. Thank you for continuing showing us your agape love during this pandemic. Bless our superintendent, principals, teachers, students, and parents. Also, I want to bless this board meeting and the board members here tonight. Allow them the ability to make the best decisions for our community and our school. Also, give us safe traveling grace as we depart from this place. We thank you for these blessings and many more. In your darling Son, Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Destin.
Yes, thanks for coming in at our request. Hopefully your mom didn't truly make you do it. Next item on the agenda is our consent items, and they consist of the agenda, minutes of the May 12, 2020 meeting, and policy for revision, JGH, food service management. Have a motion by Mr. Madison to accept the consent items.
Second.
Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. We don't have any public participation tonight, so we're going to go right into our financials. Ms. Buffer.
All right. You can see we are at 91.66% of our fiscal year. We got one more month in this fiscal year. On our revenues, we're at 95.81%. Here you can see we have collected 100% of our taxes. That will be adjusted slightly in June and for our accruals. But I looked, and last year we were at 95.28% at the end of May. So we are very, very close to how we were looking last year on our revenues. On the expenditure side, we're at 85.79%. A little bit lower on our expenditures. Last year we were at 86.97, but still quite well within range. We expected that to be a little bit lower because of some of the bills we haven't had to pay out. So that looks reasonable and certainly is making us look good for this time of the year. We go to our balance sheet. We've got about $3.6 million in the bank. Our fund equity right now is sitting at $2.8 million, and that is compared to the $2.247 that we started the year. I do look for that to go down some, but it is looking like, I think we talked about last month, we felt like we were going to pretty much break even this year, so that is looking like a pretty realistic figure right now. Our SPLOST was a very big shop this month. You notice it is $70,145.65. That is higher than any collection in this SPLOST or any of the last previous SPLOST. Don't really know exactly what happened, other than I guess everybody is shopping at home or either shopping online and we're getting the credit for it. So, but that was a big shock. I had no idea it would be that high. So with that, if you look, we are already at $639,000. Our budget is $600,000 because I budget $50,000 a month. So we've actually already met our budget for this year, and we've got one more month to go. So that is looking good, which also helps with our bond payments. So that is a good thing. So in our SPLOST account, we got $294,681.18. We have got $339,808.20 in our bond account. So we've got $634,489.38 towards the bond payments. On our capital projects, no change really from last month. A little bit more interest. So we've got $52,518. available for a project if we need that.
Any questions for Ms. Buffer?
Ms. Buffer, Mr. Superintendent, Chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I have one.
Go ahead.
So, Ms. Buffer, how do we stand right now as far as what was budgeted and what was spent? I know you still have some bills coming in before July 1,
Oh, yes, we have a whole nother month. So
Right.
we've
but how,
definitely got more, but right now we are under budget on our expenditures, so we're in good shape.
okay. How much under? I missed that one.
We're at 85, and it's a 91.66. It would be the normal percentage, so we're about 5 or 6 percentage points under.
And these lines that says, Mr. Chair, I know what you told us before on some lines, but on the title ad valorem tax,
Uh-huh.
it says 134%, 134.01%.
Right. Yeah, I only budgeted 300,000, and we've already collected 402,000 on that.
So if I put, what was it last year? Was we,
I don't know, I have
Was
to
it-
look back and see.
because I wanted to see if there was a system of under.
Under budgeting, yes, ma'am.
under-
Dr. Light fusses at me all the time about that. I budget under on the revenues and over on the expenditures.
But at the same time, the title, and correct me if I'm wrong, the title ad valorem tax has changed in the last year and a half. So it's made it harder for you to budget.
It is.
And so I think you've been a little bit
And you really
more,
don't know. That's based, it's strictly on whether people buy new cars or not.
Right.
So
But-
you could have sales in one year, really low, and then the next year really high, or vice versa. So it's a really tricky one to budget, so.
Yes, when that law came into play, it came in for new car purchases only.
Yes,
So there are still vehicles in this county that are
yes,
still under the old law.
right. That's in the ad valorem tax.
That's in the ad valorem
Yes,
tax,
ma'am.
right? So it's not just contingent on new purchases.
The TAVT is, the title ad valorem tax
Right.
is just new purchases.
So all of this money just came from new purchases?
Yes, ma'am.
That was funny. Where are the old purchases?
They're in the ad valorem taxes. It's mixed in with the other taxes. So, you have your real property, auto, mobile home, timber, all of those are in together.
Okay, can I ask you another dumb question?
Sure.
Inquiring minds want to know.
I may not be able to answer, but I'll try.
Is the state suggesting that it's separated out like that? The new car tax versus the old car tax?
Yes, they specifically gave us, if you look at the second column there, it says item number.
Mm-hmm.
Those are actually that's part of the account number, and they ask us to put title ad valorem tax in 1191, 1192, whereas the ad valorem taxes are in the 1110 through 1119, and that's coming from the chart of accounts from the state. We have to report it to them like that.
Gotcha. Because I was wondering why we had it in both places, so
That's why.
thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
okay. Thank you, Ms. Buffin. All right, next on our agenda is the 2021 budget hearing.
We wanted to provide an opportunity to discuss, and it will be a discussion. We're not asking you to approve anything tonight, but what we wanted to do was to discuss where we're at financially and what is the board's guidance that they want to give us on how to accomplish the deficit handed to us by the governor. Now, the original deficit was for 14% reduction in our QBE fund. Recently, would have been about a week ago, they changed that number from 14% to 11%. And there is an indication that that could go even lower than that before they make that final decision and provide us with a final QBE number. However, at this point, we have figured everything on 11% reduction of QBE. Now, there's ways to try and acquire those missing dollars. There's ways to attack that deficit, but we want to involve the board in the discussion and use the board's suggestion to make this work best. Ms. Bufford has created a chart to identify some choices, and we're hoping that that chart will help us make the best decision. Ms. Bufford, you want to pull that up and discuss from there?
Yeah. So basically what I've done is just give some scenarios, because I wanted you to kind of give me a little guidance about what direction to go in once we know what is happening with the, I'm sorry, I forgot to hold in, with the legislature, which they're supposed to meet next week. So hopefully we will know a little bit more in the next 2 weeks. But just a quick rundown, the column, the amounts here are the things that, you know, the big changes. So you can see, if you skip those first few for now. So the first thing I do is take out the impact aid. You remember that's something that we usually get every year, but there is a chance that we won't get it every time the president takes it out and somebody else puts it back in. So I always remove the impact aid. I have to increase the experience by 1 year. That's for all the salary schedules, all the employees. Anybody who advances on the salary schedule gets a year's experience. This year, the TRS is going from 21.14% to 19.08%. So that is actually an increase that we will get. We'll get the benefit of that. I decreased some of the administrator supplements. You'll remember last year we gave some one-time increases because of the combination with the middle high school, that the principals, the assistant principals got a little extra in their supplement. So I've decreased that, adjusted for that, so that's an increase. The board had approved for the athletic supplements, extended year contracts for 2 coaches, so that was a decrease. We have 8 teachers that I know about. There may be a couple more, but as far as I know, there are 8 teachers planning to get certificate upgrades this year, which that means they get more in their salary. And we've got employee replacements, which was basically around 18 employees that's replacing either retired or people that are leaving. Then I eliminated the transfer to school food service. You'll remember we approved that because we thought that there was a grant for the school food service equipment, but that it might not cover everything. It does look like it may. We may not have to spend that this year, but we had it in the budget, and I've taken it out for next year. I added back the middle school principal because we had taken that out, and we added a middle school special ed teacher, added that back in. I got my adjustments from my department heads, and there's that figure there. So basically the first column is just taking last year's figures and adjusting it for the changes that will happen this year in the expenditures mainly. If you remember, our budget for 20 showed us dipping into the fund balance about $787,000. So if I say that we're still doing that, you know, because all I've done is change those figures, I've added my change in, so that means if nothing had changed, we would be dipping into the fund balance about $900,000. And if we think that's going to start with the 2.2 million, we would have 1.3. Now we know that's not the case. It's not going to change. It's not going to stay the same. So the next 3 columns are really the ones we need to be looking at. The first one.
Before you get into that, would you talk about putting impact aid back in and show that it truly is a positive budget if you put impact aid back in?
Okay. So if you look, the impact aid removal took out $283,467. And if you'll see the adjustment that I'm making to the excess of revenues over expenditures, which is expenditures over revenues, is 117. If we were not taking out the impact aid, we would actually be reducing that decrease in the fund balance by about 160 some odd thousand. So without the impact aid, we have actually cut expenditures by about 160,000 from what we had in 20.
Now, the chart that I just gave you is a general fund balance analysis. And this is the chart that I asked Ms. Bufford to create for us 2 years ago, and she has continued to keep it up under my request. But what this chart is demonstrating, as you look at the ending balance, beginning balance, actual change compared to budgeted change, the way Ms. Bufford budgets, she decreases revenues, she increases expected expenditures, and it comes out to the good in the end. But the average difference from the actual to budgeted is $745,281 on average. So as you look at those numbers across the bottom, excess revenue under expenditures of $787,763 in the first column, if you configure the 745 in there, and the impact aid, we are in a very, very positive budget situation. Very good. And then COVID happened. But I wanted to explain that first so that you understood where we are at, as opposed to, oh my gosh, we're already in the hole, what do we do now? I don't want to confuse you. It's just the way that K financially does things, and it works out great for the district. You just have to understand it. And if it's never explained, then I can't say you should get it. So I wanted to show that to everybody and provide this chart. Okay, Ms.
So
K.
I'm gonna call that a buffer. That's the average buffer.
Yes.
Is that what that is?
Exactly.
Not
Buffered.
buffer, but buffer.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Is
correct.
that right?
Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
exactly it.
All right.
All right, so we know the first column is not happening. There will definitely be a change in the QBE. So the second column is just showing what we estimate. Again, this is a very much an estimate. We have no idea what the legislature is going to do. But if we say that that's the estimate, then we think that QBE earnings will be going down by about $971,000. But we do know that we're getting a federal CARES Act grant for $275,984. That is a firm figure. We have a confirmation on that.
That's
So we know
correct.
we're getting that much, which will help offset whatever the state does. So if you take those two into account, everything else is the same. That's that first column. In that case, based on my figures, we would be dipping into the fund balance 1.6 million, leaving us with only 600,000 in the fund balance. Now, keep into account that with Dr. Light's, what he's just shown you, if you add that 745 back to that, you're still around a 1.3, which is still not a bad fund balance. But there are some other options because we don't know what's going to happen next year. And that is what worries us, is we can definitely take it out of fund balance for 1 year, but we can't keep doing that. And so we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. If I went by our SPLOST, I wouldn't be too worried about it, but I don't know about the rest of the economy. So there are a couple of other things that we want you to consider. One would be to increase the taxes. So that would be, if you wanted to add a mill of tax, that would give us about $249,000. Now, that is not an actual mill, that is 96% of that, because we always adjust it for what we have to pay the tax commissioner, the 2.5% to the office, plus you don't collect every penny of taxes. There are always going to be a few. So that would be a 96% figure that you could adjust. That would help offset some of that money. So you can see with the federal money and a mill of tax, that's a little over half of that cut from the state. Another option would be to reduce our work schedule by X number of days. I just picked 5 just to give you an idea. It's roughly about $45,000 per day if we do a work schedule reduction day where everybody in the system doesn't work for 1 day. So I took 5, that gave me about $225. So again, that with the federal money is about half of the cut in the QBE. If you do both of those, then you can see what that difference will make as far as the fund balance at the bottom. So each scenario would add a little bit more. I'm just adding them all together. You obviously can do anything you want. We just need some guidance from the board as to which of these directions you want to go in. Do you want to take it all out of the fund balance? Do you want to be thinking about a tax increase? Do you want to be thinking about work schedule reduction days? And again, this is just planning because we don't know. We don't know what we're going to wind up with. You know, we're hoping if things look good that maybe the state doesn't cut us as much as 11. Maybe they drop it again. But that was according to the governor last Thursday, I think it was.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
I saw on Wednesday or Thursday. So that's why we dropped it from the 14 to the 11 in that cut.
There is conversation that it is gonna drop lower. We don't know how far. Understand the legislation isn't gonna even meet until the 15th of June at this point. That can change as well. But currently, they're saying the 15th of June is the first time they're gonna meet. So if they meet on June 15th, they hammer all this out over a week or 2 weeks, we could have those figures by first week in July.
We're hoping we can have them by the July board meeting and give you a tentative budget.
We would hope so, but there's never a guarantee, but that's what we're looking at. The idea here is for us to talk about or to think about, how do you want to accomplish this? We can roll the dice and take everything out of fund balance, and then that's going to kind of tie your hands if we get stuck next year, because a lot of the thought process of this is a long-term, long-scale financial economic negative, as opposed to short-term, everything comes back and then the economy busts right back up. That's the conversation. However, right now, we're not seeing that, and that's why they've lowered it from 14 to 11. If you roll the dice, if you say we do everything out of fund balance, then if this happens again next year, or situation of the economy gets worse, you're starting to tie your hands. Then you have to go into reduce work schedule days, and you have to look at possibly going up 1 mil a tax. But for the 1 year, you could roll the dice and see what happens.
And so right now, I mean, this is all just numbers in front of us right now. This is for us to discuss. Everything, I mean, it doesn't have to be 1 mil, it doesn't have to be 5 days. It's just,
This is just something for you to.
these are numbers that you can look at to see what, 1 mil is. If you saw a half mil, take half of that. If you're only doing 3 days, it would be the 150 and versus, the 250. So I mean, these are things that we can talk about what we consider. I mean, if we're not going to consider furloughs, then we can say that, and then then Ms. Bufford, Dr. Light will have to look, where it needs to come from. If we say we want to consider all of it, then and do that. And then the other thing is just how far we're willing to go into the fund balance. I mean, the expenditures, the cut expenditures, which they've shown, that's some. We've talked about this before. Our expenditures is salary. The only way we cut expenditures is to cut people. So I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, it's, what is it, 80% of our budget?
About 86.
86% of our budget is salary. So it's kind of hard to save anywhere else of any significance anyway to impact what we're losing from QBE. So,
Mr. Chair, question. How would we effectively, are you talking about, explain to me what you mean when you say cut staff.
I just made a comment.
I know,
that
but
is
for
the only,
instance, just.
yeah, I was just saying the only way we cut any more expenditures is that we cut people. I don't have it. I mean, I'm not here
But
to
when
propose
would we-
anyone to cut. I'm just
No,
saying
no, I'm just saying, but,
that's what it would take.
right, but not in this budget, correct?
No, I mean nothing's been. I mean, we're not.
No,
doing
the
it,
reason
but-
I'm asking, let me explain why I'm asking. The reason I'm asking, because our teachers, which make up the biggest portion of this budget,
Mhm.
are already contracted. So I'm asking the question as to what's your time frame, because can you cut people who are contracted? That's my
Okay,
question.
yeah, and well, I mean, my point was just saying that we're at, what I was trying to get to, that we really can't save much more than's already been saved on our budget. That's what I wasn't proposing to cut.
No,
one
I
position.
just wanted to ask
And
that.
as far as the contract, yeah, if we've signed, at this point, we would need, I mean, we could do a, work schedule reduction legally across everyone because of budgeting. But, yeah, from a side, I mean, from a position, if somehow someone did step away, which does happen some summers, you know, that position could not be filled. But other than that, that's kind of where we stand, so.
Okay, I have one more question. For the superintendent, or for Ms. Bufford, whichever it falls in prayer. I remember there has been work reductions done. But I also remember there was some legalities, some legal stuff that had to be followed. Does those laws still stay in place? Is it that once you say that we're getting rid of this position because of budget reduction, does the law still say that it takes 7 years to recoup your budget and to open that position back up, or has the law changed?
I don't know about the 7 years.
Oh, it
We
was
have a
7. I don't know
reduction
if it changed, but I know for a fact that at one point in time, it was 7. Has that changed?
I don't know about that. We'd have to check on that. We have a reduction in force policy, and we would have to go by that policy. But I don't know. I mean, we're not talking about
Oh, no, I
doing
just
away
wanted
with anybody
clarity.
this year. All the contracts are out. I mean, I don't think there's any way we could legally do that, other than the fact that it does say subject to funding. So, you know, but we're just saying for next year, when we start doing the budget for next year, if we dip into the fund balance, you know, don't do anything and then take it all out of fund balance, and we're looking at the same situation next year, the state doesn't increase our funding back up, we are gonna have to look at cutting some positions.
So you're looking at the meal
We're trying to
increase
look
for
long
next
term.
year.
I'm not saying any
No,
of this,
but
I'm
in
just
the
saying, look at
proposed-
these for this year as a possibility to not deplete the fund balance.
Clarity, Mr. Chair, clarity, please. It says here, if there's a lower QBE, we might have to add 1 meal. Are we talking about the 2021 budget
We're
or
talking
the
about
21-22 budget?
2021.
That's
That's
what
what we're talking about, right? These are options that we can, and it doesn't have to be everything that you see here.
I
This is-
understand, but this is a
Yeah.
hearing where we ask
Yes,
questions
yeah,
for
this-
clarity.
And we're
Am I
talking
correct?
about the coming year.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
the budget
So
that we need
these are
to.
options for the 21 year, so that we don't have to go so far in the 22 year.
One other question, Mr. Chair. I heard Ms. Bufford state that we'll be good maybe until 2021. Maybe. You didn't say we
Well,
would,
I'm
but
just
you.
saying we've got enough to cover
Right,
2021. If we don't do anything, I think the money is there. It's just gonna leave us with a low fund balance.
My question is though, Mr. Chair, to the superintendent and Ms. Bufford, for clarity, if something happens, as you know, scientists, I don't know who watch all this, but I do, I pay attention. If what they're predicting comes true, I think their fall of the year, we have to change courses again, like we did earlier this year. How will it affect the budget, the money, et cetera, and so on, in these figures that's presented tonight? Is this already in here?
If we handle a second wave, was the term that I have heard on television before. If we handle the second wave as we handled the first wave, then yes, ma'am, those figures would be as true as we could make them. What we cannot predict if there is a second wave is what is that going to do to the economy of the nation, the economy of Georgia, to try and predict where we would fall in our SPLOST or where we would fall in our QBE.
Because even though the state gives us this QB, they can come back and make a mid-year
They can.
reduction.
That actually
They've only done it
happened.
once, but
There you
they
go.
have done it once.
That was my point. That was my point exactly. I was sitting, yeah. And if that happens, what's the plan? Did you all give us an option for that? Because my thinking, my ideology is we have to go outside the box and we have to cover every aspect of possibility because nothing's ever going to be the same. We don't know how this coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, but it's real. And I think I sent you an article, Mr. Superintendent, about young people who have now,
One little girl in North Carolina was the article you sent.
because there was so much stuff in the beginning that our children were safe. As I understand in the article, she's no longer here.
That's the way I understood it as well.
And they said it was COVID-19. That's why I'm asking that we prepare a budget, a plan of readiness, because we don't need to wait until it happens and then be reactive. I'm just asking that we be budgetarily proactive so that we can educate our children safely and effectively.
And for that reason, I think we should keep on the table that last column, which has adding, it may not end up being a meal, and it may not be 5 work days, but to go ahead and impact 2021, not knowing what 21, 22 will be like, and to stay as, economically stable as possible over this next year. And I think we need, like I said, that's what we would need to do is, and I definitely don't want to hit all our teachers and faculty and all with all of it. At the same time, I don't think we should hit the county taxpayers with all of it. But to do a portion, on both ends. And if the state doesn't cut, then, definitely reduce. And like I said, it may not need to be 1 meal, maybe a half meal, maybe only 3 days. But I think we're better off right now just because we still don't know. We don't know.
That's correct.
And as you
We don't know if they're
mentioned.
going to shut the state back down.
And so, any of this can hit. And so I think we need to be prepared to stay at least status quo as much as possible right now.
I will say, just quickly, the one time that the state did cut our money in the middle of the year, they also reduced the salary scale. And so we had to adjust salaries for that, but the teachers were still teaching, but they were getting less money. So, I don't want to go through that again, but we changed the salaries 3 times that year because they kept changing the salary scale. That is a possibility, but we can't really predict that until they tell us how to do that. So.
Mr. Chair, oh, go ahead.
I'll move my hand.
Oh, you were doing it.
I was just going to ask anybody else have any comments.
Come back to me,
Concern.
I'm going to write it down.
Any comments? Any thoughts?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you something.
Yes, please.
Let me ask this before I forget. 1 meal. Let's set this stage. Taxpayers shut in. A lot of them were able to retain their jobs. A lot of them were on unemployment. A lot of them have mortgages and taxes that they already can't afford. We're not the richest county in the state. As a matter of fact, I think we're one of the poorest when it comes to unemployment and jobs, because we don't have any here. So, how do we, in the midst of this pandemic, and I'm asking my board members this, because I need clarity on what you're thinking. Ask people who are already tapped out, close to tapping out, and been done tapped out. financially. To pay an extra meal on taxes. And somebody may say, well, it's only $10, $15, $20, $50.
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but on a $100,000 home, it'd be $40, correct?
And I think that's right, yeah.
Depending on what the meal is now and depending on who else raises the meal, because there are other agencies.
Well, I'm just saying what
Yeah,
one meal
would
would be.
Right.
But that's not
That's
the
over a
only
year.
thing that would be coming out of pockets if others took suit and raised a meal, a half a meal, et cetera,
That's
and
right.
so on. So, I don't know if y'all have seen the food giveaway lines, but they've been healthy. They've been big, they've been large. People who probably never thought they would need that assistance found themselves in a place where they needed it. I think if we put our heads together, we could come up with workable reductions, workable cuts that will not hurt the quality of education for our students and will not hurt our tax base, our taxpayers. I just want us to really be serious about looking at what we're looking at and being honest to say this is enough or go back because this ain't enough. Look at something else. Bring us something different. Because that would be my plea. That would be my request. But I understand I'm only one crying in the wilderness. And I'm still shouting, Pharaoh, let my people go. I'm still trusting God to do that which is right, even if I have to stand by myself.
Anyone else?
So you're asking for a different option than 3 options that they've got listed here, what you're saying?
And as we discussed a while ago, 85% of our budget is salary. Right now, our salaries are all under contract. So you've got 15% of everywhere else that you can try to go into.
A little history, Mr. Chair. Back in the day when we had to do cuts, we sent back until, and I remember that. Still have some of that with me. And I'll be glad to review it, preview it, and bring you all up to speed. But just because this is what's presented, we're elected board members, and we have to do what's required to us by state law. And state law requires us, and we take an oath of office to be fiduciary responsible for the people's money. In other words, it tells us to be of good stewards about our people's money and to spend it wisely and diligently to do that which is right. I'm paraphrasing the law, but basically that's what it says.
Ms. Freeman, I'm not
That's all.
arguing on any.
No, I know,
the-
but I'm just saying why I'm
in
saying
those
what I'm
years,
saying.
though, that budget process started in January and February before contracts. I mean, I was on some of those where we let some employees go. And so, I mean, it was a situation where you had that option. I don't know that we have that option right now, that we can let employees go.
I'm not asking
because-
to let,
But I mean, that's what, when you sit back, I mean, that's where those cuts came from. The cuts came, yes, you can find, some dollars in transportation. You can find some dollars in some other things, but the true cuts came from cutting out positions.
You gotta remember that back when
no.
2008, 9, 10, in those years, we cut out a lot. It hasn't come back, so there's not as much excess in there to cut.
Yeah, we did cut a lot of waste back then. And that's what happens.
But, I mean, you've heard what Ms. Freeman said, you've heard what I said, but we need more input so they know what they can really should be expecting to do. Chris?
I think the previous board, for first of all, putting us in a position where we are, where we have this extra money. I mean, Ms. Bufford and Dr. Light, y'all have done a great job with that. I kinda like what Jason said, you know, if everybody shares in this together for this next year, we can attack it more aggressively the following year if we have to. That's my opinion. And the taxpayers, you know, all of this money's been saved. They actually paid it years behind, and it's sitting there in this fund right here. So, you know, I would lean more towards not raising the tax, if anything, but I'm in favor of whatever we gotta do. But we do need to be aggressive, and I like what you recommended.
Sparks, you got any thoughts on it?
Still thinking it through.
Good. Mr. Madison?
I don't know, I don't like cutting people. I mean, I know we may have to, but like you said, we got that money there, and that is taxpayer money, and I don't like raising taxes when we've got their money sitting there. And we don't know what's gonna happen. And I wish we did.
One of the beauties of the conversation of increasing it 1 mil is we don't have to make that decision tonight or even next month. The tax digest is set the 30th.
Usually in August or September.
Right, I was gonna say the 30th of September's, somewhere in September is when it has to be done. So that gives us a little bit of time as well, which can help guide the economy, barring a turnaround second wave. We can't predict a second wave. If that happens, what's gonna happen, we don't know that yet. But I do think that it gives us a little bit of time, which is why we wanted to have a conversation tonight, so that we could discuss and absorb you guys' insight as well. I mean, y'all live in the community like we do. How do we make this best for everybody?
And no one's not, you know, no one's gonna jump for joy with any type of tax rate increase. Our teachers definitely aren't gonna jump for joy with knowing that part of their salary is being cut. Students don't mind having a day off, but the teachers, they would.
Educationally, they don't need a day off.
No, they've had enough.
Yes, sir.
And so,
Still a lot of unknowns, is what
Yes,
I'm
sir.
saying, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
and it is, and that's why we're not making this decision tonight. It's more as much as anything. It puts it out on the airwaves, puts it out with you to start thinking about it. When you talk to your constituents, you can get an idea of just how hard it's going to be, one way or the other. But as it looks right now, we need to do something. We will need to do something. Just because with the first year I came on the board, that year, the end of that year, we actually had to make a loan, I'm pretty sure, until the taxes came in, because it had gotten that low. Correct me if I'm wrong, that had been 2010.
I don't remember getting a loan, but I remember holding bills and not paying some, choosing which ones to pay.
Okay. Well, I know, and it may have been able to take it out of one, but
Yeah.
it was where you've seen it down below $1 million, it was down in the 50 and 60,000. So
The last time this board increased taxes was to where they voted to increase the taxes was
2011.
11. I was going to say 10. Okay, it was 11.
2011.
Okay.
Do you want me to hand that out?
Yeah, we can. I think that is a valuable piece just to consider, and it will help the board as they have discussions with their constituents to say, here's where we were way back when.
and that would have been my first year
We-
on the board. I remember that.
We did some digging and some research back to say, when did we raise taxes last, how many times, and what was it before? And that sheet that you're about to see goes all the way back to show you that we were at one point a 12 on the very bottom for a millage rate. And it goes all the way up in 2013 to 17.135. The highest you can be without a voter-approved increase is 20 mills. Now, if you go into Atlanta or you start talking to past governors and complaining that our amount isn't high enough, they tell you you're not doing your fair share because you're not at 20 mills. My point to past governor was 17 mills in Lincolnton is more than enough at where we were at before. I felt like they were killing us with the austerity reductions. We finally killed the austerity reduction, but we sure in the world would have never predicted COVID-19. So we can go up legally. It's legal to go up, but this gives you more information to talk to constituents about.
The other thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because most of this was done before I got on the board, but the 2004 to the 2010, all of that increase it wasn't that our budget increased, it was that our state funding decreased. And so that's when it took it, as he said, away from the state, it took it down to our fair share had to increase.
Right.
So that's information for you. Like I said, this is not being acted on tonight, but it is something that we think about now. You need to definitely be thinking about. As soon as we get some numbers from the state, we have to make this. This is the first year that I've been on the board that we didn't pass a budget in June. So.
Mr. Chair, one last question on this matter. Can we get another line of reduction that would look at things a little differently? And I heard what you said. And anyone with common sense knows that you can only cut what you can cut. Anyone with common sense knows that you can't cut teachers' salaries unless it is state authorized and state mandated. I'm not asking you to do what you can't do. I'm asking you to look at that which you can look at legally and do some more reductions and bring that to us. I know some of our newest members may not understand the budget, but I understand it quite well. And when I make my statements, I'm not making them because I want your answers. I'm making them to see the answers that you would give me, because I have studied well, and I'm a good student, and God has prepared me for such a time as this. I know that there are areas that can be cut. I know there are places that has not been reflected on these sheets. All I'm asking for is for you as employees to help me do my job as an elected official and look for other cuts, so that when I look at this again, I can make the best decision for Lincoln County, Georgia. That's all I'm asking. And if it's asking too much, then when I make this motion, or do I have to resist to making a motion, or with the chair just ask that it be done?
Well, I would ask, yes, that all things looked at. All things be looked at.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
An ideal situation, in my mind, is that the school budget can be cut some. If needed, at that point, taxes slightly increased, and teachers have a day or two furlough. It'd be, everyone would share. It's not ideal, but that's as good as we're probably going to be able to get. So, any other suggestions? Just to give an idea of which way you're leaning to Ms. Buffer and Dr. Light.
I have a question for Ms. Freeman. Ms. Freeman, you said that you know that there are some areas on here that's not listed.
Well, let me say this. There are areas here that I don't see other things, a possibility that could be in here.
Ms. Buffer, do you see anything?
Well, this is not the budget now, this is just the summary of the changes that have been
Right.
proposed. I haven't given you the detailed budget yet for y'all to look at. I'm just trying to get some guidance on which directions you want to go if it winds up looking like this. As far as, you know, if the state cuts us this much and this is what we're looking like, where do you want me to go with that?
So I must be under the wrong, let me
I
go
mean,
back.
we don't have a budget here, as Ms.
But
Buffer
I
said.
thought, this said to me, this is misleading. It said here on this agenda, budget hearing. That's what this says. So I came prepared for a budget hearing. And now I'm being told that this is not a conclusive budget hearing. This is just portions of the budget.
Everything that's been presented is, like Ms. Buffer said, these are what we're looking at, the immediate changes of things that are impacting. Because we don't know the QBE from the state, we don't have a definite number. We're discussing it, but it's not, no, we're not going through a full budget.
Well,
right
back
now,
in the
so-
day, to answer your question, Ms. Barksdale, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
to finish your question, back in the day, and I guess the chair will remember this as well, we were given a notebook with the entire budget that we were able to go line by line by line as board members so that we could intelligently, astutely, as the law says, to be good stewards of the money, and go line by line and know all that the budget entailed.
Ms.
So
French,
that's,
Ms. Barksdale and Mr. Huntman were on the board last year.
but
They-
she asked me a question, so I'm answering. Does that kind of give you?
But she was
Okay.
asking, do you have an idea of where the savings can be? That's what she was
I've
asking.
looked at other line items, yes, I do.
But can you recommend some that,
That's not my job,
Oh.
and I would be out of my premier as an elected official to do so. That's why we have them, and that's why I'm questioning them, because that's my job as an elected school board member. I'm not to do their jobs. I don't micromanage. I'm asking questions. So they would have to produce that information.
does anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, thank y'all for your input. Next item on the agenda is a spending resolution.
We are recommending that we sign a spending resolution. We have been talking about the spending resolution possibility since April, trying to explain that we would not have numbers, and we still don't, and it would make the most sense to do a spending resolution for the month of July. It allows us to spend 1/12 of the final amended budget for all funds for the fiscal year extended June 30, 2020, plus debt service and capital expenditures known to be due in July. I am recommending that we pass a spending resolution so that we can meet these requirements and needs until we can present and get a solid budget approved.
And this is needed to keep our school open. I make a motion that we accept the spending resolution as presented by the superintendent.
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Massey. Any
Question.
other discussion on the spending resolution?
Mr. Chair, we've met every month, even during COVID. We've been here. Would you give me the explanation of why it's taken so long to do this budget that's normally due now? Or we normally have it done by now?
Because we don't have the state funding. We don't know what the state's gonna be giving us.
We have made tentative budgets and approved them on a tentative basis, but I hear your explanation, I thank you.
In my 12 or 10 years on the board now, we've had the information from the state before we've made a budget. And we've always had that in the spring.
My tenure from being on here since '92 and having a decent recall, not a photographic one anymore, but a decent one. I beg to differ, but we'll
Well,
move
Ms.
on.
Bufford, in your time, you've been in the office how many years?
Well, I've been in the office since '92, I've been in this position since 2000.
Okay, do you remember not having the state funds set before we did a budget in the past?
I do not remember that.
Okay, thank you,
We
Ms.
usually get
Buffett.
the figures around April or May.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
A second.
Any other discussion on this motion? All right. All in favor of the spending resolution as presented? All opposed? 4 to 1. We have 3 policies for review. CEB, School Superintendent Duties, IDFA, Interscholastic Athletics, and JE, Student Support Services.
All of those are accurate as written and do not need to be updated, so that's why they are in the review column. Next one down would be policies for revision. Now, we discussed both of these at the last month's meeting. This is the grading system and the promotion and retention of students 8 through 12, which is IHA and IHE. IHA, as you remember, reflects the change in first through second grade for standards-based, and then third through eighth, for
K through 7.
K through second for standards-based, and third through eighth, thank you, for numeric grades. And as you open up on page 1, you can see the adjustment there to be added, which is Georgia Milestones End of Course Test. And then the adjustment of the grades as it affects through the policy. Also 9 weeks and end of course test on page 2. And those are the changes for IHA. And to look at IHE, on page 2, you can see to be eligible for enrollment in the kindergarten of the state-approved primary. You can see the different individual changes that make this policy up to date. It used to say handicapped students, totally inappropriate today. It should be students with disabilities. Just gives you an idea of this policy being updated. Or other assessments, which is possible as the governor is reducing assessments. Numeric is changed to make it accurate. And then on page 6, you can see where first and second grade promotion criteria, third, fourth, and fifth grade promotion criteria. Takes us down to page 7, 6 through 8, updating the language and the verbiage to make it meet today's standards. And all of that needed to be changed. So those 2 are recommended for revision.
Any questions on any of those policies? Okay. Superintendent reports.
I just want to give the board an update in case you have gotten a phone call. I have been working with CSRA EOA Head Start for every year that I have been here since 2015, trying to get them in a better situation. Over the past 2 years and starting this year, we will not have a Head Start program. I talked to Ernestine Smith just 2 weeks ago, and again last week, and she explained that she cannot get anybody to work in Lincoln County. Her words, not mine. And she says that she has tried every year, she can't get anybody to come out here and work. So they are withdrawing from Lincoln County. Now, over at the elementary property, you can see that one of those buildings is already gone. That was removed on Friday. The second building, which is a double-wide trailer that is over there, they're going to attempt to get that out of there within this month. She is trying to find someone to remove that and get that off of our property. That is their trailer. Once that is done, the plan is to remove the inside fencing and to create a much more usable playground for our elementary students. But that is the plan for Head Start. I wanted to update you in case you got a question of why was that building removed. That building didn't belong to us, and Head Start took it back, and they're also taking the double-wide trailer.
How does Head Start get funded?
Head Start is funded through federal and some state, but mostly federal.
Is there any way that we can find out if, I mean, has Lincoln County designated a certain amount of that? And if so, why can't we get that?
We would have to start another three-year-old program within that restriction, and I'm trying to figure out if that's possible.
But I'm just saying, even the last 2 years, I mean, if they received funding that was because of our population, our area, but they provided nothing, where did that funding go?
Right. I don't know that answer yet, but I'm trying to find that out.
But they didn't have a low attendance, they didn't have enough kids for the program. They have to have a certain number of students.
They do have to have a certain number of students, and I know that the first year, they were waiting on some children to expand that and be large enough to justify an additional teacher. And there was always a question, and Miss Arthur, help me if I'm stepping out of bounds here. There was a question of them wanting to have an additional teacher, and then they couldn't find anybody. They had children that they either didn't serve or felt they couldn't serve based on the disabilities of that child or children, and they ended up having smaller numbers than they were funded for. But they were still funded for those kids. And then all of a sudden they couldn't get anybody to work. Am I there? Is that still accurate?
Well, I think in the past they've hired several people. Miss Gwen Hurst was one of those. I actually saw her today, and she noticed that they were moving things, and she said she was actually hired by Mrs. Smith, she and another lady, and then there was no contact after they were hired, and nobody got it back with them, and so they didn't know a start date, they didn't know anything. And there have been several others. Miss Healy was hired. She was only there for a short time. They let her go. From what I can gather from the people locally that have been hired, it was a management issue with Mrs. Smith. But I don't know because I've never met the lady, never have had a conversation. I do know that there's a need for it. Our pre-K is bursting at the seams with a waiting list this year. And we have 3-year-olds with Miss Ashmore in her class, and there is a need for it. But, I don't know how to go about making it happen.
Please research. If you
Yes,
can.
sir, absolutely. Trying to figure out where we can get some help.
Mr. Superintendent, is it not true that Head Start is a federal program?
They do receive federal funding, yes, ma'am.
Head Start is under the federal program. Head Start is not under a county, but having said that, I was here when they put the trailers out there. I don't know if you were.
No.
I didn't think so. But I was out there when they put the trailers out there. I know Mrs. Ernestine Smith. And I haven't talked to her in years, but I know that she's a professional. I know that there were other issues that has not been cited, and I won't cite them but I know that's not the gist of everything that happened. You know, with what is going on in this country right now, we have to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. That program met a lot of opposition because Miss Ernestine looks like me. And that program was not wanted by a lot from the beginning because it served people look like me, children. I know that certain portions of this community have not done everything they can because they wanted control of that program. And in my mind and spirit and heart, I believe they did everything they could to undermine it so that they could obtain control. Having said that, every entity that educates our children, especially this one, does not need to come under the purview or the powers of this board. I have a hard time trusting some of my colleagues when it comes to the hiring of African American teachers because of racism and injustices. I have a problem trusting my colleagues when they say they love God, but they do all manner of evil against me, just a little nobody. I have a problem trusting my colleagues when they don't do everything in their power to help those who are downtrodden, those who are poor, those who need our help and our support in this school district. I have a problem with my board being okay with every administrator not looking like me. And that's not to say anything about y'all. I'm not saying nothing negative. Y'all didn't do it. Y'all didn't have a vote. So please don't take this to your heart because it ain't that way. And I'm telling you that from my mouth to your ears. Receive it as it's given for basic information, not for hatred, because I don't hate nobody. You know I've worked hard for teachers. You know that too. And I hear the rumors that's going around this county that Miss Freeman stood at the board meeting and she was against teachers. I heard it had happened down in the cafeteria. One of the teachers that don't look like me felt impelled to call and let me know. I need for people to start being truthful because I know you by your rightful name. I know you by your spirit. I know who you are. I know where you belong and who you belong to. I know this. But all I'm asking you tonight is to do what's right by all students. Don't sit here and parade a black student every now and then to come pray. Pray for yourself. Pray for ourselves. You have a minister of the gospel on your board, Mr. Leroy, who you've never asked but one time to say a prayer. One time. And I know why you do it. My spirit knows. Because I'm just going to tell the truth and shame the devil, because you hold your personal grudges.
Ms. Freeman, we're talking about Head Start.
I know.
Let's keep
this
it with
is
Head
about
Start.
Head Start. You can't do right by those who
You're
sit with
asking
you.
me. I've never met Miss Smith. I have no idea what Miss Smith. I know we have not had Head Start here for the last 2 years.
But don't incur.
I don't know.
Don't incur that she's not doing her job.
I didn't
That's right,
say
you
anything
don't.
that she didn't do
I'm
her job.
saying anybody who says that.
It was discussed that the local people, it was just said that the local people that work for her didn't get support from
Tell
her.
the whole story.
Well,
Maybe she
that's
didn't
what
get
I heard. I don't know her.
Did
I
you,
can't discuss
as chair
anymore
of
about
this
it.
board, did you ever call her and tell her you support the program, that you want to do everything in your power to make sure that every child in this county gets a quality education?
I know
and
we
whatever
offered other buildings. We offered permanent buildings, permanent structures. We had them look at those. We gave them several options. So I don't know what else we needed to do.
Then
I understand that it's not a high-paying job,
No, it's not.
and so I can understand why it may have been very difficult to find people to come to. I mean, I accept that, I understand that. But I don't know why you're lambasting this board, the rest of this board, for the lack of Head Start.
I'm not lambasting you only about Head Start.
That's true.
It
I
started
agree
with that.
It wasn't only
started
about
with
Head Start.
that.
Yeah.
And God just multiplied it into something
I
else.
don't think it was God.
Well,
I
you
think that was
wouldn't
all
know.
you.
You wouldn't
That
know.
was all you.
No, you
Yeah,
wouldn't know.
that was all you.
I'm
So-
not gonna argue with you, I don't have to, but I will say this. Time's up. I'm done, I'm finished.
Okay.
I leave it in God's hand. You don't know what that means.
Right
but
now, we actually don't have anything on the executive session. So without anything else, I'll
Motion to adjourn.
accept the motion to adjourn. Have a second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Thank you.